We must not fantasize the scriptures or something like that. We have to look at the scriptures through a realistic point of view, okay? Because these are situations that arose because of real life scenarios. All right, so we're going to pull from the scriptures another account. Let us look at our forefather Jacob. Okay, now Jacob is Abraham's grandson. Isaac, Jacob's father, sent him from the land of the Chaldeans to the land of Canaan, where he found his wife Sarai, where his son found his wife Rebekah. And now he's telling his son Jacob, you go to the land of Canaan and go and find a wife. Okay, so Jacob goes to the land of Canaan. He meets a young lady named Rachel. Okay, when he meets Rachel, because she's one of the villagers, he begins to tell her who he is, who his family is, why he has come to the land of Canaan, where he was from, which is the land of the Chaldeans. And she says, "Oh, whoa, you're my kindred. I'm Rachel. Laban is my brother, and you know um my father would be your mother's brother." Okay, so they begin to make acquaintance. We're looking at Genesis chapter 29:31. Now the scripture says Jacob loved Rachel. Okay, he saw Rachel, and he began to work for the family because he began to stay with the family. And Rachel's brother Laban, asks Jacob, what would he like to labor for? What would he like his wages to be? And Jacob says, well, I'd like to, work 7 years for Rachel, because the scripture says he loved Rachel. Okay. And when the scripture says in Genesis chapter 29, and you can read the count on your own a little bit later or even now, but the scripture says that when the Lord saw that Jacob loved Rachel and hated Leah. Now, what does the account say? The account says that after the 7 years were over, Rachel's father deceived Jacob and ended up giving him her sister Leah. Now, the scripture says Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel was very beautiful, very fair to look upon. And when Rachel's father deceived Jacob, he was very displeased. And he went to the father and he says, I worked 7 years for Rachel. He said, give me my wife. He said, you gave me Leah. And the father said, well, it's not fit for me to marry off the younger daughter before the eldest daughter. So just fulfill her week of marriage, and then I'll give you Rachel, and then you can work another 7 years for me for Rachel. Okay? So Jacob obliges, and that's what he does. He fulfills Leah's week, and then he is given Rachel, which is the wife that he wanted, which is the one that he loved. And he works another 7 years happily for Rachel. And in the meantime, the scripture says that the Lord sees that Leah is hated. Okay. Now, when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened up her womb. All right. And when she bore Reuben, she said, now therefore my husband will love me. All right. Now, sisters, we know that no matter how many beautiful, perfect and well-to-do sons you give to a husband that does not love you, he will never love you. And we'll continue reading and see whether or not Jacob ever began to love Leah. Okay. The scripture says, now, Leah says, because the Lord has heard that I was hated. This is further down the line now, okay? This is further down the line. She says, again, now at first it was the Lord saw that she was hated, but now she says, because the Lord has heard that I was hated. Okay, so now she realizes that Jacob doesn't love her. Okay, because her first thought was, now my husband is going to love me, right? Because I bore him a son, Reuben. But she saw that that didn't happen. Okay, and now she says, because the Lord has heard that I was hated, he has therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon. As time continues, she has to hire out her own husband. Okay, Genesis chapter 30 now, ladies, 30 and 16. And Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him and said, you must come in unto me, for surely I have hired thee with my sons as mandrakes. And he did lay with her that night. Okay, now, when she bore Levi, she says, and now will my husband be joined unto me. As time continues, she says of Zebulun, now will my husband dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. Sisters, if you have borne a man many sons, you know that if that man never loved you, he still don't love you still. And I'm not saying this to be harsh, okay? This is the reality of a situation where a woman is with a man, whatever that reason might be. For this sister, she's with this man because her father married her off to a man that actually wanted her sister. He didn't ever want her, okay? In other cases, it might be because, we decided to settle. Maybe you were in like a 5-year relationship or a 10-year relationship, and, you have a son. Now you're like, oh no, now I got to stay with this guy. There's no need for me to leave him now. Then boom, you have another child, right? You have another son. And you're thinking with each son you have, well, maybe he's going to stop, going out all the time. Maybe he's going to stop, coming home late one day soon. Oh, now I have bore him 3 sons. Maybe now he's going to love me and treat me a little bit better. Maybe now he'll put me first in the relationship, and, maybe now I'll be his best friend instead of all his boys. Or, you see what I'm saying, y'all? It's like the same type of situation that we go through in these days, okay? But in Leah's day, it was not fit for her father to marry off Rachel before her. So the father gave her to Jacob, and then he gave Rachel to Jacob. And because Jacob never wanted Leah, Jacob hated Leah. He did not love her, okay? And now she has bore 6 sons. Now she thinks he's going to dwell with her. Because remember, she had to hire him out. He wasn't dwelling with her. He was dwelling with Rachel. Okay? And she said, now you have to come and you have to, stay with me tonight and lay with me tonight. And then she bore another son, right? Not to mention, y'all, how Jacob positioned the sisters when he felt like his brother Edom was seeking his life on his way back to the land of the Chaldeans. He put the handmaid of his hated wife first and her children, because remember, when Rachel saw that she didn't conceive and she saw her sister kept having children, she gave Jacob her handmaid, okay? And her handmaid conceived. And then Leah got jealous and she was like, well, Jacob, here's my handmaid. And her handmaid also conceived, okay? And then finally, after all of, these games that these sisters were playing, the Lord finally opened up Rachel's womb and she had Joseph. And he puts Zilpah, which is Leah's handmaid, and her children first. Secondly, he puts Bilhah, which is Rachel's handmaid, second. Then he puts Leah third and her sons, and then he puts and her daughter, and then he puts Rachel last and Joseph. Okay? Each in drones, one after the next. In the case harm comes to one, the others can disperse and perhaps be safe. Okay? And through all of these things, you guys, the Lord is righteous and faithful still. Because even though Leah was never loved by Jacob, she is the one who had the burial of his wife. All right? Once she died, she was buried in the cave of Machpelah with the forefathers of Jacob. Okay? Again, we have another account, Rehoboam, right? Rehoboam, we know, is King David's son's Solomon's son. So King David's grandson, Rehoboam, also had multiple wives. Okay, this is the book of Chronicles. Okay, and the scripture says that Rehoboam married multiple wives. He had many wives, many concubines. And the scripture says, and Rehoboam loved Maacah, the daughter of Absalom, above all his wives and concubines. Now, Rehoboam loved Maacah above his other wives and concubines, just like Jacob loved Rachel above his other wife and concubines, just like Abram favored Sarah above Hagar.